Hello YouTube. It is the first week of July, so of course that means we are paying bills. I thought I would come up here and speak with you about how I allocate funds when I'm budgeting and how that works with separate finances. I went to a discussion of how we manage our separate finances in this video here, so if you want to check that out, it'll give you kind of a backstory of how we split everything with separate finances. And again, that may not work for you, but it's worked for us for 16 years, so we just continue on with it. But that'll give you a better explanation of how split finances can work in a marriage. Anyway, so I wanted to just talk to you as I was doing my bills. I was like, I should just click on here and talk to you about how I allocate funds for debt payment. And I am actually a firm believer in paying yourself first. So everything I do, I actually pay myself first before I start my debt payment. And I know that is not always the recommended thing. A lot of finance gurus, etc., they suggest that you just go full force into debt payment and don't try to save simultaneously. I believe in trying to save simultaneously. It has worked for me. It continues to work for me, and that's how I tackle my debt. I tackle my debt after I pay myself. Now, how do I pay myself first? Well, the very first thing I do is my retirement. My retirement is taken out before I get my pay. It's, to me, the safest form because you're not touching the money. I think when you have access to the funds, there's more of that possibility that you will not put yourself first. So what I do is I contribute 18% of my pay to my retirement before I receive it. And I would love for that to have been 20% because at this point in time in my life, that's really where I should be. But my company match takes me over the 20% threshold, so I'm comfortable with that right now until my debt is paid off. So 18% off top, gone. Just gone. Okay, then with my take-home pay, I take 10% of that and disperse it within various sinking funds of things that I am trying to do, achieve, or work on. So the first 5% of that 10% goes to my car fund. That car fund will be the money that I use when it's time for me to replace my car. It could be a down payment. It could be to pay a car in full. I'm not sure the route I will go, but regardless, that money will be utilized for a replacement vehicle when I am ready. So 5% car fund. Next, I go to an account that is just like a brokerage account. It's a small brokerage account with stash that I use just because I'm trying to familiarize myself with how to invest. I know that, that's not maybe the best vehicle, but it works for me. It has worked for me for a few years now. I've been doing that. And so I allocate 1.5% to that account. And again, that account is just for me to learn how to invest my money because that will be extremely useful to me once I'm in retirement and how to allocate my money in a direction that could probably make me more money in retirement and keep that going because you're going to want to continue a cycle of having your money work for you once you're no longer bringing in a full-time income. The next bucket, I have 2% going to a backup emergency fund. A lot of people do not do this, but I am so fearful because of the things that I have been through in the past. I am so fearful of having something just take me back there that I have instituted a backup emergency fund. And that backup emergency fund is what I would go to first should anything catastrophic happen, before I would go to our joint emergency fund. Again, we do have a joint emergency fund. Right now, it is fully funded. We have 6 months worth of expenses in there. I actually think we have around 8 months expenses in there, and which I'd like to get it to 12. So that's why I'm continuing on with the emergency fund. But that emergency fund that I contribute this 2% is just a backup before we touch that. So I'm hoping that I could pay a month or two worth of emergency expenses before having to go to our joint emergency fund. And that is just a me thing from personal experiences and just being very fearful of the possibility of a horrible thing happening. That is just what I do. So that's 5% to my car fund. That is 1.5% to that brokerage account, the small brokerage account, and 2% goes to my backup emergency fund. Now, the final 1.5% goes to what I call an FE fund. What is an FE fund? I got that phrase from my cousin. He has been very instrumental in helping me with finance matters. And he was also a person who believed in me and told me that I could achieve more, and encouraged me to move out of my small town to a bigger city and just try to find a career, which I eventually did. So I'm very thankful to him. We are very close, and he has helped me so much that, I could never even measure how much of an impact he's had on my life. But he calls the FU fund money that you put aside for nonsense. Doesn't have to make financial sense, doesn't have to be contributing anything of any value. It's just money that you see something, you want something, you get that with that FE fund. It is just money to blow. And his reasoning behind that was that when you're aggressively paying off debt, and I see this all the time, even with other finance channels, I see people talking about this, about the burnout that comes from aggressively paying debt. You get to a point where you're tired of it. You're sick of it. You feel like you're giving everything away. And so that FU fund kind of quells that feeling, because there's always money there that you could do something if you really felt like it. And I've had an FU fund for years. I think I've only tapped into it 2 times, but the feeling of knowing it's there is good, because if I just get in a mood where I feel like I want to shop or I want to splurge, that's the account that I go to. And it just helps. It helps. It gives you just a calming feeling. It's like, okay, if I'm going to blow some money, this is the account that I'm going to blow money from. So that's what that account is, an FU fund. I highly suggest you get one when you are able, because that is the fund you will use when you are making just a random buy, just something that it's adding nothing. A purse, I want to get my nails done, or something like that. That's the fund that I would use for that. So that's the 10% breakdown. So 10% of my take-home pay, 5% goes to the car fund, 2% goes to my backup emergency fund, 1.5% goes to my brokerage account, and then 1.5% to my FE fund. That is how I split that, and that is how I pay myself first, along with the 18% that I contribute to my 401k. So that's how I do that. Pay yourself first. All right, moving on. How do I pay debt payment? I do use a debt snowball method. My debt snowball now is around $1,000, and I keep it that way generally for the year. I keep it like that because that's what I'm comfortable at. It gets me to roughly my 20K debt pay down, because that's an extra $1,000 in addition to my regular payment. So for the mortgage, what I have done is I took the equivalent of 2 extra payments a year, broke that down into the 12-month period, and I add that much money extra per month to my principal payment on my mortgage every month. So it's basically I'm paying 2 extra payments a year toward my mortgage, because it cuts down the years that you have to pay it off. Now, of course, I got a 30-year mortgage. Some people advise against that. Some say 15. That is what I have. I have a 30-year mortgage, and so it has cut years off significantly from doing that. So that's just something I'm doing while I'm trying to aggressively pay the student loan. The student loan is my aggressive payment, but I do contribute a little extra to principal every single month toward my mortgage as well, because I just like the progress that makes. So student loan, I pay an extra roughly $1,000 a month toward that, roughly. And that I do each month, but I also try to do 2 lump sum payments a year. One toward the spring, one toward the fall. I will do a lump sum payment, whatever I can save from found money or extra savings or whatever, I will throw at the student loan. Now, my hope is that I can get my student loan down to a little under 10K this year by December. And I want desperately to wipe out one of those sinking funds and pay the remaining 10K. I don't know that I'll be able to do that. It is something I'm hoping for, but I'm not sure that I'm going to be able to muster the strength to do that. The thought of it makes me cringe. I'm fearful, basically, of it. So if I do not do that, the current plan that I'm on will have me paying off my student loan before the end of 2025. So it wouldn't be very much longer that I would have the student loan. And then I plan to shift that $1,000 to the mortgage in addition to what I'm already paying with that extra principal. And that should take another 3.5 to 4 years to pay off the remaining balance of my mortgage. So we're talking about a 5-year time frame. Everything should be gone, my student loan as well as my mortgage. Now, that is comfortable for me, if I'm being honest. That's comfortable. So this pace puts me at a place where I'm not pressured. I'm not feeling stressed by paying off the debt. And I need that, because I have a tendency to get fixated on things. So I like not being stressed out about the fact of whether I'm going to get this done, how I'm going to get this done. Oh my God, I've got to put everything that I've got toward this. And so it helps me to continue to be able to save in my sinking funds, which is very important to me. And it allows me to get the job done, paying these debts off in a reasonable amount of time. Now, do I plan to keep the same pace? I don't. Like I said, I hope to pay the student loan off in December. I hope that I get the courage to be able to do that. But worst case scenario, if I don't and I pay that off in 2025, I plan to, like I said, divert that money to the mortgage, but also I plan to add some to that to pay off the mortgage even faster. But, we'll see how it goes. But if all plans fail, this path is perfectly fine for me. So if it takes me 5 years, I'm good with that. Like, I think that's a reasonable amount of time when you're talking about two of basically the biggest debts that you have, you know. So I'm good with that. I would not beat myself up about it. And that's the point that I like to get to, is a point where I'm not beating myself up, because I think when you're on a debt payment journey, it's very important that you're not like emotionally tearing yourself down. And when I first started this, that's what I was doing. I was emotionally tearing myself down. And I don't like that feeling. It didn't make the process enjoyable. And this way actually makes the process enjoyable for me. I enjoy seeing the balances go down. I enjoy that I'm still able to do things that I want to do. I enjoy that I'm still able to save. And so it's a very comfortable position for me to do it this way. So that is how I split everything out for my debt payments. And of course, my 1/2 of our household expenses goes into the joint account, along with half of what we save toward our emergency fund every month. My husband does the same. So we are both paying our household expenses together. That includes the base mortgage payment with our escrow. That all is in our joint account. The extra I put in, but the regular mortgage payment with escrow is in the joint account. We both contribute to that, and we both contribute to our emergency fund. And so the remaining money that I have goes into our joint account for those bills to be paid, you know, electricity, water, etc. So that is how I split my check. It has worked for me. It may not work for you, but the one thing that I will say is please, please, please try to save something, especially in these times, in this economy. Try to do something to set yourself up to have some cushion if you can. I know this economy is crazy and it gets harder and harder to do so, but I'm telling you, that could be a big relief to have those funds available, that you're able to save something right now. And another thing, retirement. I think a lot of people, they look at those calculators and they'll freak out because the calculator will say you're off track. And I used to be freaking out about my retirement, thinking I was off track. But those calculators use your current pay and a multiplier of your current pay to say what you would need in the future. Basically, it assumes that you're going to want to live the exact same lifestyle that you're living right now. But for me, I'm really only living off of around 70% of what my pay is, because I'm contributing in retirement and I take that additional 10% and contribute it to savings. So I'm not really using that for my bills per se. That's not how I'm living. So as long as I'm able to meet the requirement of that 70% of my income in retirement, I'll be good. Like, I'm good. So you need to think about how you want to live in retirement, where you think you will be living in retirement. Will your mortgage be paid off? Will you have a car note? All of those things. Also my husband is retired from the military, so our insurance is through the VA. So we don't have the type of insurance expenses that most people would have. We won't have the type of medical insurance premiums necessarily that a person would have in retirement. So our health insurance premiums will be significantly lower than most. So those are all things to consider. You should consider how you're going to live in retirement, and that's what you base your goal on. So that's just a tidbit to extra. So hopefully this has been informative. How do you split your pay? How do you tackle your budget? I would love to know. Please go down in the comment section and let me know how you do it, because I could always learn something new, and I would love to hear from you. So take care.